H.P. Lovecraft is one of the most famous horror writers of the first half of the 20th century. He's known as the father of cosmic horror, along with the forerunner of the genre, Robert W. Chambers, author of The King in Yellow. One of the most distinctive elements of the weird tales in the Cthulhu Mythos are the various places. From the Shunned house to the waste in the story Dagon, there are a variety of terrifying ancient temples, decrepit homes that serve as portals to alien hells. Good evening, everyone. My name is Boomslang. Join me tonight as I discuss some real-world locations that inspired places in the Cthulhu Mythos. The 1924 story, The Rats in the Walls, revolves around the central character and protagonist, Delapore. At the beginning of the story, he decides to move from rural Massachusetts to his family estate, the Exham Priory. Delapore's family has passed away completely, leaving him as the sole reclaimer of his name. He proceeds to restore the abandoned Exham Priory and moves in right after the restoration is complete. Despite the work done to the priory, the house is infested with rodents, and Delapore continues to hear rats scurry behind the walls of the manor. Through the means of investigation and bizarre dreams, Delapore receives visions about an ancient underground city. In the end, he uncovers his family's darkest secret. The House of Delapore has a history of cannibalism, and the city was a place where they bred proto-humans and harvested them. Delapore succumbs to his family's hereditary hunger and ends up in a mental institution, constantly driven wild by the sounds of rats in the walls. It's not a pleasant story, and it's one of the more discomforting entries included in the mythos. However, this site has a real-life counterpart that is almost as forbidding as the Exham Priory. Let me introduce Lou Durg, a beautiful sanctuary located in an island in the center of a lake by the same name. The area is picturesque, but the history and lore of the place is far darker. The legend behind this place states that St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, was shown this site by Jesus himself. Patrick was shown a gate into hell, and it was revealed that a portal to hell was located in a well on the island. Patrick was terrified by what he saw, but used the portal to convert the local pagans. A glimpse into eternal damnation resulted in many converting to Christianity. A sanctuary was built on the site, became a popular destination for pilgrimages. The image of a holy place perched over a gateway to hell was incorporated in Lovecraft's work. Pickman's Model. The twist at the end of this story is up there with the earlier story, The Outsider. Pickman's Model is the story of a man named Thurber, who recounts the events leading up to the disappearance of the fictional Boston artist, Pickman. Thurber once visited this artist, who was well known for his disturbing drawings of terrifying creatures he called ghouls, or perched on headstones. Thurber is intrigued by these reports about the ghoul paintings. He makes his way to the artist's studio, where he is given a private show by Pickman. These works are some of the most disturbing images Thurber has witnessed as his time as a critic. He is shaken by the brutality he's observing in these paintings. Thurber begins to question the sanity of Pickman. At one point, scratching is heard from the door leading to the studio. Pickman fires a pistol at the door, scaring away whatever is scratching at it, and dismisses the noise as the noise of rats. Thurber pockets one of the drawings on the easel. When he picks it up, it folds, and Thurber realizes that the painting of the ghoul isn't a painting. In fact, it is a photograph. Copp's Hill Burying Ground is the inspiration for much of the story of Pickman's Model. This sprawling graveyard is one of the oldest cemeteries in Boston, founded in 1659. When Lovecraft visited the site, the graveyard was abandoned and not maintained well. Some of the older headstones were badly broken and overgrown, and the aura of decay pervading the site served as a perfect backdrop for the monsters in this story. Another popular entry in the mythos is the story The Call of Cthulhu, written in 1928. This tale setting resembles the older Chambers story, The Mask. The first part of The Call of Cthulhu is titled The Horror in Clay, primarily focuses on a young sculptor's descent into deep madness. The sculptor, named Wilcox, experiences vivid nightmares of cyclopean cities he describes as being filled with latent horror. He dreams of Cthulhu himself, a god monster that stands miles high. Wilcox locks himself in his studio and spends a long time making a statue of the monster he saw in his dreams. Lovecraft drew inspiration for the studio from an unusual art studio located in the College Hill area in Rhode Island. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to see this studio as a place where an insane sculptor would hole up in. This garishly colored house was built by Sidney Burleigh, a popular watercolor painter, was intended as a home for the Providence Art Club. The house has a variety of bas reliefs of different forms of art, like sculpting, painting, and acting. With the interesting color and unique artwork, it's easy to see the place as a preferred refuge for insane sculptor. This location also relates to the Call of Cthulhu stories. Nan Madol is a hulking mass of stone, far too large to be called a tomb. This is an ancient city located on the remote island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, not to be confused with the island of Pompeii. The area where the city is built is called the Reef of Heaven by locals, and extends onto some 92 man-made islands. The construction of Nan Madol has led some to call it the Venice of Micronesia. It's thought that this place was built over hundreds of years, was inhabited by government officials and priests. Construction was finished roughly 900 years ago, and the city continued to be ruled by the kings of Pohnpei until its abandonment in the middle of the 19th century. It is currently in deep disrepair and has been rotting and overgrown for some time. Looking at pictures of the monolithic structures and long straightaways gives you a sense of how great the city once was. Legends state that the site was built using black magic and the help of a sea dragon. The news reports about this city provided inspiration for the mind-breaking non-Euclidean geometry of the city of R'lyeh. One of Lovecraft's more well-known stories that were published after his death is The Shunned House, released in 1937. In this story, the protagonist and his uncle set out to investigate an abandoned house located on Benefit Street in Providence, Rhode Island. For a long time, the two have investigated the series of mysterious deaths of previous inhabitants of the old house. They proceed into the house and get ready for the night. The house's cellar is pretty disgusting, with much of it covered in phosphorescent fungi, and a patch lies on the floor in the shape of a person huddling down in the fetal position. The two set up cots and chairs in the cellar and prepare themselves for supernatural encounters. The main character's uncle, Dr. Whipple, begins to toss and turn in his sleep and babble in French, a language he's never learned. Dr. Whipple wakes up and breathlessly tells about the horrible nightmare he's just experienced. He's had a dark dream of lying next to a pit, inside of a house that constantly shifts its appearance, while horrendously deformed faces stare down at him. The author is worried, but nonetheless, they continue to camp out in the shunned house. They both go back to sleep. Soon after, the narrator is woken up by a yellow light emanating from the floor, and soon after, his uncle is transformed into a monster. The main character hightails it out of the house. His uncle's body dissolves and melts into a multitude of faces. The narrator decides, for some mysterious reason, to wait and come back the next day. He returns the next day with a gas mask, digging equipment, and barrels of sulfuric acid. He's determined to kill whatever lies beneath the house. He digs deep beneath the house's foundation, and soon has a deep hole ready. He uncovers a soft white, glowing, translucent tube in the hole, and to his horror, realizes he's uncovered the body of a gigantic creature. He faints, then revives and climbs out the hole. He dumps the acid and is relieved when he discovers the fungus covering the basement of the house has dissipated into harmless ash. It's a pretty great Lovecraft story, and the Shunned House heavily resembles its real-life counterpart. The Shunned House's inspiration was the infamous Stephen Harris house, a beautiful home located in Providence like its fictional doppelganger. The cheery yellow paint and renovations over the years haven't helped clear the building of the infamy surrounding it. The house was built in 1763 by the merchant Stephen Harris, was constructed over an old French Huguenot graveyard. After moving in, Harris experienced massive financial loss, and multiple ships owned by his company were lost at sea. This was followed by the death of many of his children, and the stillbirth of several more over the next few years. Harris's wife went mad from the continued stress and tragedy, both inside their home and out, and was confined to the top of the house. She was often heard ranting in French, a language she never learned, just like Dr. Whipple in the story. One of the greatest recurring locations in Lovecraft's work is the infamous Miskatonic University. Located in the fictional Arkham County, this college is where the deadly tome, known as the Necronomicon, is stored. This site is an all-male school known for its great brick edifices and eccentric staff, like Harvey West, Reanimator. Its real-life equivalent was the all-girls finishing school, known as the Bradford School. This college building was established as a girls' school in 1803, before becoming a junior college in 1932 and a 4-year coeducation college in 1971. At the moment, it serves as a Bible college. The site has a long history of paranormal occurrences, and it's said that the true Necronomicon is at the bottom of the lake next to the school. Lovecraft often visited the campus, as a girl he was interested in lived on campus. Another good Lovecraft story is the Dunwich Horror, released in 1929. The story revolves around Wilbur Wheatley, a young man who has knowledge of the occult from his grandfather. Wilbur grew into adulthood by the age of 10, and it's said that animals are driven insane by Wilbur's scent, and soon after he's shunned by the townspeople. The Wheatley family are hiding a massive secret, literally, in their farmhouse outside of town. The family is harboring a creature connected to the multi-dimensional god, known as Yog-Shoggoth. The two of them are actively working to provide cattle for the monster. Wilbur's grandfather and mother soon pass away, and after that, Wilbur seeks access to the Necronomicon for nefarious purposes, not like he'd use a occult book for much else. Wheatley initially asks Dr. Armitage, the librarian of the Miskatonic University archives, for use of the book, but Armitage rejects his proposal, fearing what could happen if the book went into the wrong hands. At a later date, Wheatley breaks into the library before being savagely killed by a guard dog driven mad. Armitage and 2 other men arrive on the scene and discover that Wheatley is a human octopus monster hybrid. The body abruptly disappears, leaving nothing but ash. Wilbur Wheatley is assumed dead, and no one decides to investigate the home. The creature in the farmhouse escapes, leaving massive footprints that perplex the people living outside the edge of town. The invisible monster grows more desperate and more hungry, and comes into the town to look for more food. Soon after, the creature kills multiple families and 2 policemen. Eventually, Armitage and the 2 other professors who are interested in this kind of stuff, Warren Rice and Francis Morgan, arrive on the scene to fight the creature like some sort of eldritch Ghostbusters. The professors use magic powder to reveal the monster. One of the professors catches a glimpse of the back of the monster and is driven to madness. The creature calls out in English to its father, Yog-Shoggoth, before bursting into flames. The abomination's nature is revealed. It was in fact the twin brother of Wilbur Wheatley, and their collective father was Yog-Shoggoth. One of the minor parts of the story I left out were the distinctive stones mentioned as being outside of Dunwich's outer limits. These standing stones were directly influenced by the stones known as America's Stonehenge, located in the deep New Hampshire wilderness. It's unknown as to what civilization placed these stones, and they've been a popular tourist destination since the 18th century. Lovecraft loved exploring ancient American architecture and abandoned sites, taking several trips to visit different areas. In 1928, he came to this place. It's not a stretch to see the American Stonehenge as an idea that inspired the Dunwich Horror. One of the first Lovecraft tales I ever read was The Dreams in the Witch House, and it remains in my top 5 list of Lovecraft's works. This revolves around Walter Gilman, a student attending the infamous Miskatonic University. Gilman rents a small room in the attic of the witch house in Arkham, Massachusetts. The site is rumored to be haunted, and the previous boarders in the attic have all passed away. The witch house earns its name from a previous resident, a witch named Keziah Mason. When Gilman arrives, he discovers some odd occurrences in the attic. The room's contents are relatively normal, but the entire room's dimensions are unusual and described as being unearthly geometry. Gilman isn't bothered and is convinced the entire room can move between dimensions. He experiences strange dreams during his initial stay, and continues to experience the sensation of floating as he drifts through surreal spaces of strange geometry, indescribable colors, and sounds. He encounters all sorts of entities in this space, from bubble-shaped creatures to a sapient polyhedral figure. In other, more unpleasant dreams, he encounters the witch and her rat-bodied familiar, known as Brown Jenkin. He also experiences a trip to the ancient city of the Elder Things. During his travels there, he breaks off a tiny statue of an Elder Thing, and when he wakes up, it lies clutched in his hands. His dreams become even stranger. At one point, he is taken to the throne of an entity named Azathoth, and helps the cult worshipping Azathoth kidnap an infant. Later, he has a nightmare where he sees the witch and her familiar preparing to sacrifice the baby. Gilman intervenes to save the child and strangles Keziah before the rat bites the child and completes the ritual. Gilman wakes up from his slumber and is promptly deafened by an earthly sound, and tells another boarder living in the house, called Elwood, of the horrendous dreams he's experienced. The next day, Elwood witnesses the familiar, Brown Jenkin, eating his way out of Gilman's chest. I make a joke about Gilman eating his heart out. That seems a little too much on the nose. Trust me, I've taken the warnings about using dad jokes in my videos too often to heart. After the death of Gilman, the landlord kicks out the tenants and the house is condemned. Years later, workmen demolishing the house find a crawlspace with the bones of the witch and her occult books. Small bones, a sacrificial knife, a bowl of unknown material, along with a statue of an elder thing, are recovered as well. Soon after, the skeleton of a massive rat with some disturbingly human features is uncovered beneath the floor of the attic. This is put on display in a local museum. The workers leave and head to a nearby church for evening service, and the story ends there. I personally like this story. I think Lovecraft's descriptions of other dimensions can often be beautiful, and the fantastical descriptions contrast the horrific supernatural events very well. Lovecraft was partially inspired by the history of the various northeastern witch stories and the Salem witch trials to provide the background for the events surrounding the witch house. The real-life representation of the house will be the Jonathan Corwin House, a seemingly innocuous home in Salem, Massachusetts. The unassuming gray house doesn't harbor an evil like the other fictional witch house, but was the site where the judge made the ruling condemning suspected witches to the gallows in the Salem witch trials in 1692. One place that doesn't feature as prominently as some of the other places in this video is the fictional Arkham Sanatorium. The place is only briefly mentioned in the Cthulhu Mythos, most notably in the story The Thing on the Doorstep, published in 1937. It serves as a psychiatric ward to house those people in Arkham County who've been exposed to truths that broke their mind and took their sanity. In fact, the name for the sanatorium, Arkham, inspired the choice for the name of the asylum in the Batman comics. Arkham Asylum was partially inspired by the creepy Gothic style of architecture in many of Lovecraft's stories. Lovecraft was heavily influenced by the nearby Danvers State Hospital for the criminally insane, and the place is even mentioned by name in early stories. Danvers State Hospital had an intimidating red brick facade, was well known for the series of underground tunnels that helped circulate warm air in the freezing winter months. Lovecraft enjoyed the intimidating appearance of this ward, and it helped him define some aspects of the aesthetics of his weird tales when he first began to work on short stories. It's fascinating to see the way that creepy locations in Lovecraft's home state of Rhode Island influence his outlook and style of writing. As you can see from this video, Lovecraft was heavily influenced by his hometown of Providence. As I researched the background, I realized just how much a person's home influences their writing. One example that comes to mind would be Stephen King and the place Maine has throughout his stories. Places influence the overall outlook we have, and it's clear to see how the dreary surroundings of Lovecraft gave credence to his particularly grim writing style. Thank you so much for watching. Before you all leave, I just wanted to thank you for checking out my channel. It's been awesome to see my iceberg videos do so well. Thanks again for watching. Take care, and happy Halloween.